In the early 1930s, the mood in Germany was very grim. The worldwide economic depression had hit the country especially hard, and millions of people were out of work. Still fresh in the minds of many was Germany's humiliating defeat 15 years earlier during World War I. These conditions provided the chance for the rise of a new leader, Adolf Hitler, and his party, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, also known as the Nazis. The party's rise to power was rapid, and on January 30, 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor, the head of the German government. When Hitler and the Nazis came to power, the widespread beliefs of racial purity and superiority of the Germanic race became prevalent in the minds of all members of society. A central policy of Hitler's administration was the development and implementation of policies to protect the superior race. One method used by the Nazis to prevent the pollution of the superior race was to legalize anti-Semitism and isolate the inferior races. The Nazis believed that they were simply applying facts proven by science to produce a superior race of humans as part of their plan for a better world. In 1935, with the passing of the Nuremberg Laws, the racial theories prevalent in Nazi ideology were institutionalized. With the beginning of World War II and the quick defeat of Poland, the Germans began strictly enforcing their anti-Jewish policies. More than 2 million Jews were trapped in the German-occupied zones of Poland and were swiftly moved into ghettos and concentration camps. Here, at the concentration camps, all those considered to be enemies of the German state were subjected to arduous labor, deplorable conditions, and harsh treatment. At the center of this tragedy, the medical experiments is the murder of European Jews, men, women, and children, killed not for the identity they affirmed or the religion they practiced, but because of their blood. The Nazi medical experiments performed on human subjects were a part of the regime's biomedical vision. These experiments were performed on masses of people at various concentration camps and institutions throughout Nazi Europe and were seen as the acts of Germany's scientific advancements in medicine. This vision intended to set the tone for the regime's medicalized approach to life unworthy of life. Some of the experiments that were performed included tests on sterilization, hypothermia, high altitude pressure, seawater injections, bone grafting, cancer, mustard gas, artificial insemination, abortion, and many diseases such as typhus, malaria, hepatitis, influenza, as well as spotted and yellow fever. These medical experiments were seen as normal through Nazi ideology and functions of Germany's racial policy. In the Nazi scheme of things, race was the overriding concern, where the ethics and laws were breached to meet their ultimate goals. While medical experimentation utilizing human subjects is an acceptable and even necessary component of medical research, such experiments are traditionally subject to severe restrictions. As for the Nazis, they ignored these fundamental medical ethics, striving to advance the purity of the Germanic race. Certain German physicians and scientists were involved in the perpetration of crimes and barbarities of a medical nature through both experimental and non-experimental means. Even though they followed the biomedical vision, many of the medical experiments were devoid of adequate scientific design, were poorly executed, and caused suffering, injury, and death. Many experiments were performed on human subjects without their consent and complete disregard for their human rights. There is nothing darker or more menacing than the participation of physicians in mass murder. After the war and the liberation of concentration camps across Europe, some of those responsible for crimes committed during the Holocaust were brought to trial. A series of 13 trials held in Nuremberg, Germany between 1945 and 1949 indicted and tried Nazi leaders for the atrocities they committed. The doctors' trial, held from December 9, 1946 to August 20, 1947, accused 23 defendants of crimes against humanity, including medical experiments on prisoners of war. After almost 140 days of proceedings, including the testimony of 85 witnesses and the submission of almost 1,500 documents, the American judges pronounced their verdict. 16 of the doctors were found guilty and 7 were sentenced to death. We remember because we must never forget the inhumanity of which humans are capable. We must also remember, in order to call forth our human capacity for great acts of heroism, courage, and self-sacrifice, we must remember the times of cruelty and suffering when in the darkest of all places in man's world, day after day, hour after hour, the killers killed, the victims perished. Let us remember those who suffered and perished then, those who fell with weapons in their hands, and those who died with prayers on their lips, all those who have no tombs. Our heart remains their cemetery. Elie Wiesel.